Awesome. Well, thank you, Ron. Thanks for the introduction. And I just want to thank all the speakers that presented before me. Really great stuff to see what's going on really all around the country, as well as also within Texas. So just great to see. And I know you definitely described Houston as the this oil and gas place, right? We were the oil and gas capital of the world, but I think we're definitely making a transition to the energy capital of the world. So definitely some exciting things going on in Houston. And like Ron said, I represent Evolve Houston. We are a public-private partnership or a nonprofit, really acting to enable electrification of transportation in the Houston area. So I want to kind of start from the top and really talk about how our organization started and where we came from. So during the development of the Houston Climate Action Plan, we identified, or it was identified, that transportation is a large contributor of greenhouse gas emissions within the Houston region, about 47%. So definitely a really high number. So in 2019, we worked with a few founding members to start Evolve Houston, again, a nonprofit public-private partnership with a mission to improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by promoting the development of a landscape that enables mass EV adoption in the greater Houston area. And really what our ideas or what our vision is we want to make sure that clean transportation and clean air are a reality for all Houstonians. And these things really go together, right? This doesn't necessarily mean everyone's getting a Tesla, right? This could mean access to clean public transportation or micromobility or ride share or car share or even a personal vehicle. So we really take a vendor agnostic, OEM agnostic approach to advancing this electrification of transportation. Like I mentioned, our founding members come from a wide variety of private and public places. So we have the city of Houston, so the municipal government. We work very closely with a number of departments at the city. CenterPoint Energy, who is the region's utility. University of Houston, a leading research university in the region. NRG Energy, a large energy producer in the region, and Shell. So again, a great mix of public and private entities really coming together to help us at Evolve do what we can to advance electric transportation. So again, kind of looking at how we're structured. So really everything that we do as it relates to improving the region's air quality and electrifying transportation is around our 50 by 30 goal. So our goal as an organization, which matches the federal government's goal, is that 50% of new vehicle sales within the region will be EVs by the year 2030. And there are a couple ways that we're doing this. So when we started as an organization, we identified three key areas in our EV roadmap, which is available on our website. And those three areas we figure would really help advance EV adoption. And those are awareness, affordability, and availability. And really what that breaks down to is making sure that people know that these options exist, making sure that these options are available to people, whether that's something like EVs at the dealership or charging infrastructure at home or away, as well as this growing industry and a wide number of jobs within the Houston area. And a little bit more tactically, the way that we structure ourselves is we have a core Evolve Houston team, and then we receive some great resources from our founding members, whether that's funding or not funding, research, or really sometimes it's just all hands on deck. And then also pulling from external stakeholders for things that we can't do ourselves. Our founding members may not be the best suited to assist us with, but these organizations are very specialized in accomplishing. Again, whether that's charging installation, research, EPC, consulting, really a wide variety of different organizations. As an organization, we are broken down into three main external facing programs. The first is our marketing program, which is less of a marketing program or traditional marketing program, more of an advocacy and awareness program. And really what the idea behind our marketing program to do is to educate Houstonians about everything about EVs, their advantages, their accessibility, where charging stations are, what an EV even is, and how they can get behind the wheel of an EV. This program really interfaces directly with the public. We do a lot of great events. We just announced that we are going to be the title sponsor for the main sponsor for the Houston Auto Show for the next 3 years. So if anyone is in the Houston area or coming to the Houston area in January, definitely come by the auto show and check us out. And we also we do a bunch of ride and drive events. So we'll come to an organization or host one for the public where people can actually get behind the wheel of an EV and learn what it's like to drive an EV, learn about charging EVs. We often partner these or pair these with panels and presentations as well, just to inform on the whole ecosystem. And finally, our marketing program has a really nice digital presence, a great social media, and a really awesome YouTube series. I suggest you guys check us out. Our next program is actually the program that I lead. This is our commercialization and infrastructure program. And really, this program can be broken down in two places. So number one is obviously commercialization. And this is really the tactical implementation of EVs. So working with certain organizations to help them develop their electrification strategies, whether that's doing something like a fleet assessment and helping them understand how EVs can really be integrated into their fleets and their operations. Or maybe it's a public, a property owner who wants to install charging for the public or maybe for their private tenants on their property. The program also tracks commercial and consumer vehicle adoption behavior. So we've been tracking EV adoption since our founding, which was at about 2% of new vehicle sales. And I just looked at August, and that was between 8 and 9% of all new light-duty vehicles. So definitely seeing large growth in EV adoption in our region. And then on the infrastructure side, I really take a 30,000-foot view at what charging infrastructure is like today and what it will be like in the future and how we need to get there as EV adoption continues to increase. So I'll help guide investments in public and private charging infrastructure, again, whether that's at a public place like a shopping center or public right-of-way, or maybe it's an apartment building or even a single family home. But just really making sure that the charging infrastructure is there, working closely with the utility to make sure that the grid can distribute that energy, and then energy producers to make sure that they're generating enough electricity to sustain this large adoption as well. And that kind of goes into the infrastructure requirements at the region level. And then our final program is our equity program. And really the idea there is to help encourage the idea that electrification is not just for a subset of a wealthier and typically less diverse population, but making sure that all Houstonians have access to the advantages of EVs. And again, that can be special rebate programs on vehicles, new or used. It could be greater access to clean public transportation, or maybe even micromobility. And one thing that the equity program does really well is we actually just closed our first round of our micro grant program. So we took funding from some very generous donors, and we were able to essentially turn that back out to the community in small grant amounts for very specific e-mobility projects. And these were assessed by a board of evaluators to make sure that Evolve isn't the only one who's evaluating funding, but really helping to understand what the specific needs of the communities are and helping distribute funding that can maybe either kickstart a project or just get them over the edge to help bring clean electric transportation to that community. We also have 3 internal facing or really support programs, which are policy. We're a non-lobbying organization, but we do track EV policy. We have a research policy or a research program that can help with anything like a consumer research or regional wide adoption research. And then finally, our grants program, which doesn't give out grant funding, but it helps people kind of navigate the complicated world of EV grants. And we have a great grants tracker actually on our website. We'll be putting out a updated version later this year. But the idea there is to help people understand what the landscape of grants really looks like. Sorry. And then this slide is just kind of to give you guys an overview of some of the things that we do. There's some pictures here from some of our ride and drive events, some pictures from the auto show, other educational events, and then we had a big relaunch event in August to announce our new executive director, who's pictured in the second picture on the top, the second picture from the left, standing beside the mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner. And just bringing a lot of people in the industry together. And then some pictures from our YouTube series as well. Again, since I'm the director of commercialization infrastructure, I want to talk a little bit about my program. So I'm actually pictured here next to, I'm sure a lot of you guys know what this is, but this is the Ford F-150 Lightning, Ford's electric version, really, of the F-150 Lightning. And I had a great opportunity to come to a ride and drive event sponsored by Ford and get behind the wheel of one of these vehicles. And I think I may put myself in line now to get one of these. It's a great vehicle, both for personal use, but definitely for fleet use. And fleet use is something that we really focus on in the CNI program. So to date, we've assessed 15,000 public and private vehicles, fleet vehicles, operating within the Houston region for their electrification potential, and looking at the vehicles that are both feasibly and economically feasible for electrification. And I'll get into that in a moment. But if those vehicles were to be electrified, we'd see TCO, so total cost of ownership, lifetime reductions of $28 million. So these are dollars that come out of the top line that can really help a private organization. But these are also oftentimes tax dollars, right? If you have a municipal fleet, saving a lot of money can really reduce the burden, the OPEX and the CAPEX burden on the taxpayers that are ultimately funding these fleets. In addition to these economic fundings or savings, we found an annual CO2 reduction of about 17,000 metric tons of CO2. So again, definitely economic advantages, but really a lot of environmental and human health advantages to electrifying vehicles within a fleet. So that exists a lot on the commercialization side. On the infrastructure side, we published a report earlier this year. We call it our RISE Houston report, our regional infrastructure strategy for electrification. And I'll get into that as well. But really, this report is one in a series of reports that is helping to assess what the regional infrastructure requirements are going to be to support widespread EV adoption. So now I want to go into 2 case studies that are in the CNI program. The first one is on fleet adoption, and the second one is on our RISE report. So last year, we performed a fleet assessment on the City of Houston's light-duty municipal fleet. So as a part of the Climate Action Plan, the City of Houston set their goal to electrify its entire light-duty non-emergency response fleet by 2030. But obviously, this is a huge endeavor that no one organization can go through by themselves. So we collaborated with them on this report, and what we did was we assessed these about 5,300 light-duty non-emergency response vehicles that operate within the municipal fleet. And to do this, we partnered with a leading a technology company or data company in the space, EIQ Mobility, to help understand the fleet from an economic perspective, from an operations perspective, and of course, from an environmental perspective. So in analyzing these about 5,300 fleet vehicles, we identified 4,150 or over 4,150 technically feasible vehicles for electrification. And what that means is that there's a vehicle on the market today that meets the technical requirements of the existing fleet vehicle. So that's both the vehicle classification as well as the operating metrics of that vehicle. So typically that's the daily range requirement as well as the dwell time to make sure that that vehicle would have enough time to charge. So for instance, if there's a pickup truck in the engineering department of the city, we wouldn't want to give them something like a Nissan Leaf. We'd want to give them a pickup truck to replace that pickup truck. And I will say this study was done about a year and a half ago, before we knew a lot of the details about the F-150 Lightning, before we knew a lot of the details about some of the other offerings within the e-mobility space. So if we were to rerun this fleet today, this study today, I guarantee that number would be a lot higher. So again, about 4,100 technically feasible vehicles and about 1,345 economically feasible vehicles. And what that means is, so we took the number of fleet vehicles, we took out those that were not technically feasible, and then we reduced that even further by the ones that were not less expensive to own and operate over the lifetime of that vehicle. And again, that's total cost of ownership, not just the purchase price of the vehicle, but the purchase price of the vehicle, fueling and maintenance and fueling infrastructure as well. So these 1,300 or so vehicles would, over the lifetime of that vehicle, would actually be less expensive than the vehicles that they would be replacing. And that also did not include any grants or incentives. I know we talked a lot about grants and incentives earlier, but we wanted to take a very conservative approach and not include grants and incentives. So if that was something that a fleet wanted to include, again, the number of economically feasible vehicles and the bottom line savings would be even higher. So in electrifying these vehicles, we identified $6.9 million in lifetime total cost of ownership savings and an annual reduction of about 5,700 metric tons of CO2 emissions. And again, that's every day. And I think really something to highlight here is no one organization, whether it's a municipality or a Fortune 500 company, is capable of doing something like this by themselves. So that's why we're happy to collaborate with the city and pull in partners of our own. EIQ Mobility helped us with the fleet assessment, but there are a lot of other players in the space, from vehicle OEMs to charging OEMs to engineering companies that can help come in and assess the depots for electrification upfit, charging providers, and then of course the actual contractors that would come in and sort of lay the conduit, so to speak, and install these chargers. So there's really this great value in collaboration at every step in this process, and I don't think a project like this can be done again by just one organization. The next case study that I want to address is our RISE Houston report. Again, our regional infrastructure strategy for electrification. So again, when we started as an organization, EV adoption was at about 2% of new vehicle sales. In August, we were over 8%, and that number is continuing to rise. So no pun intended. So as that number continues to rise, the number of vehicles on the road is rising. So too will the energy demand and the need for charging as well. So what we decided to do is we decided to get together with our stakeholders and do a lot of research on the region to find out what that's really going to mean, where chargers need to be placed, how the grid needs to be configured to make sure that these charging stations are getting the electrical capacity that they need. Of course, making sure that our lower income and minority and heavy and diverse communities are getting the chargers that they need, so they're not left behind in this transportation revolution. So earlier this year, we published the first in our series of RISE reports, which set out to answer two key questions. So number one, can the current rate of infrastructure growth keep up with the rate of EV adoption? And number two, how much money is required to support future EV adoption forecasts? And what we found was that right now, or at least 6 months ago, the rate of infrastructure growth is keeping up with EV adoption. But if you look at the S curve on the screen, right, we predict EV adoption to grow rapidly, and we're not seeing that in EV infrastructure. So in order to support these vehicles, there's really a need for a huge investment in EV charging, both the chargers themselves as well as the underlying infrastructure. Fortunately, we've had some great things like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, that are really helping to get money into the municipalities or into the regions and help them with this. But there's really a need for investment, which brings us to our second finding, which found that within charging infrastructure itself, so none of the electrical upgrades or generation upgrades, there's a need for about $420 million in public charging over the next, at this point, 8 years to help us get to that 50 by 30, and an additional $200 million that will be needed for MFU at-home charging. So this comes out to about $600 million. I know someone mentioned earlier that Texas is the largest recipient of the NEVI funds, which is, I think, about $408 million coming to the state. Well, the Houston region needs over 600 million. So there's definitely going to be a need for investment within the region. And again, going through this exercise really helped highlight the fact that no one organization can do this by themselves. We didn't even research this by ourselves. We had a lot of people that helped us across the region. Electrotempo helped us put together a dashboard. You can see some screenshots from there. They helped us with this report and help us and other players in the space continue to help us really forecast what charging demand is going to look like. Of course, we brought in the utility and some charging providers and some electrical demand providers as well. But really fleshing this out and building an ecosystem that can help to solve these problems and address the future growth in charging demand.
Hey, Harry,
yeah.
It's Ron Gerber. We're about ready at the end of the time frame in a minute or two. So I want to make sure we close it up. There's one question. Yeah. I don't know if you have any data James asked about, how do you tie in the energy or fossil energy generated by manufacturing these cars? And do you ever consider that? Or do you have any data on that? And then if you could finish up so we could finish up, that would be great.
Absolutely. I know it's been said time and time again, but the most environmentally conscious car is the one you already own. And that's absolutely true, right? The amount of resources that go in, whether it's fossil fuels or renewables, to manufacture these vehicles and get them on the roads is pretty astonishing. But with that being said, the OEMs are definitely investing in more sustainable ways to manufacture their vehicles, and vehicles need to be replaced at some point, right? I'm not shy to admit that we do get some of the materials for these vehicles from conflict countries, but we also get our oil from a lot of these conflict countries as well, and other fossil fuels. So it's very complicated. But the way that we see it is, ideally, if someone is looking to replace the vehicle that they own and they can choose between an ICE vehicle and an EV, we want them to choose the EV. Chances are it's going to be a more economical choice over the lifetime of that vehicle. But it's also going to be a more environmentally friendly choice, especially as we look at advancing energy transition and getting away from fossil fuels and powering these vehicles with renewables. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. Okay.
And just one last slide. We have two upcoming events. Our first is our commercial ride and drive. So bringing people from different public and private organizations to get behind the wheel of some really great vehicles later next month. And then, of course, come see us at the Houston Auto Show in January.